Hello everyone, this is Club 10M Plus's exciting new podcast that's here for you. We are all about stories, new developments and learning about individuals. Our hope is that you will join us every week to hear about our distinguished guests. We hope to inspire you, bring you laughter and make you reflect. Our guests come from all walks of life and primarily they want to share their stories. Not sure about you, but I love a good story. So Club 10M Plus have devoted their time to creating these podcasts, to sharing great ideas and stories and much more. So tune in every week to make sure that you don't miss out. It could be you next week. Want to know more? We want to hear your stories. So sign up and be our next guest. Hello and welcome to you, Dominic. I am so thrilled to have you today as a guest, and I'm looking forward to seeing your points of view. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you to introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hello, it's great to see you. Great to be here, and thank you very much for this little platform. I hope we can share a few interesting things today. I'm Dominic McGonigal. I'm a composer, entrepreneur, and director. So a few strings to my bow, if you like.
Come on, you're being very, very modest here. Come on, Dominic. There's more, and there's more. There's always more. So come on, tell me a little bit more about the composer side of you.
No, absolutely. I've been really a composer all my life. From earliest times, I wanted to write music. I then had a long period of extended writer's block for various reasons, having studied music at Cambridge, and I pursued a sort of multifarious career in the music business, and then the wider creative industries and digital businesses. And at the same time, I've continued performing professionally. And then latterly, I have rediscovered my composing voice. In fact, it was 10 years ago. I had the confidence to be able to say, yes, actually, I am a composer and I will write things. And I'm lucky enough to know lots of performers who have asked me to write things. So I've written things for a lovely string quartet run by a dear friend of mine, Pat Halling. And then Philomel, which I describe as a super group of sopranos set up by another friend of mine, Janet Oates. And it is literally up to 6 sopranos all singing together, usually a cappella, so unaccompanied with no instruments, but sometimes just with one instrument or maybe 2 instruments. So I've written quite a lot for them, and I've written for brass instruments, trumpet, trombone, horn, tuba, written for wind instruments, written for strings. I've written for a wacky instrument called the theorbo, which is sort of like, it's an old guitar. It's like a lute, but with an extended neck. So instead of the sort of normal length of the neck, it extends to create these massive bass strings at the bottom of the instrument. So you've got these huge bass strings and then a sort of lute strings at the top. And it basically only existed for about 100 years during the 17th century. It was invented for a specific purpose, for early opera, and then it basically died out. Got taken over by the keyboard and orchestra and things. So a group of us decided that we should write some music for it, because it's a fantastic instrument, and it doesn't have much repertoire, and it doesn't have very much any contemporary repertoire, really. So actually, it was a group of about 15 composers that wrote music for the theorbo.
Wow, and who said you don't learn anything on this? Wow. So now we know we've got a 17th century instrument resurrected from back then. I mean, I wasn't alive, so I wouldn't know, but we're kind of learning. And I know
it's part of our DNA to discover and rediscover things. So it's interesting that listen, I am absolutely in awe of the work that you do and actually the people that you meet while you're doing this as well. So for me, it's always a pleasure to hear about how music has been created, and it's from the minds of people like you who sit down and think these two notes string together really well. But where do you get your inspiration from?
That's the $1 million question. It's a constant mystery. On the one hand, I've got music buzzing around my head all the time. Either my own music or somebody else's music. It's just there. So, for instance, the other day I sang a big event in Brussels Cathedral, which was the Festival of the King. Now, I don't know how many countries have a Festival of the King, but anyway, Belgium does, and had this huge event in the cathedral where I was singing because I sing with the choir there. So there were 8 of us up right up in the gods, filling the cathedral with sound. And so I've got some of that sort of buzzing around my head, but then I've also got my own things come up. And yet when I kind of sit down to write, it's sort of, yes, I've got ideas, but are they good enough? And then I try and work on them, and then usually find that they are good enough, but they need a little bit of changing to get them to respond. And sometimes it just flows, and sometimes I have to kind of work at it and let it fester. I sometimes think of it, I'm not so much composing as decomposing. That just let all the material kind of fester for a few days, or in a few weeks, or even in some cases a few months, and then
I'm going to
it
say,
suddenly
Dominic,
happens.
it sounds like my world. I have to really think about things and really sit down to write stuff. It's like the most painful thing. But if you ask me a question, I can talk about it all day long. So I get that. You're either in flow or you're not in flow. And when you're not in flow, it's impossible to actually do anything like that. But, I'm in awe that you can sit and actually write the notes. And they sound good when you play them. So that's also important, because there's something like deconstructed harmonization. Because I love it when I think it was Lenny Henry going back years. It was the one of the comedians, Dawson, wasn't it? Les. He would play this stuff, and you're just like, oh my gosh, my ears! Will you stop? But it was his thing, and it was very cleverly done because he had to do it. He had to do it properly to be able to do it back, do it the wrong way, if you like, so that it's a skill in itself, So I understand. I understand how hard that can be. Appreciate that. I'm going to ask you the one thing that I'm asking all my guests is, who are we? And that is something that you can come around to answering in your way.
Well, I introduced myself as a composer, entrepreneur, and director, and that covers most things, but of course not everything. I think at heart, I'm driven by creating things, by creating, obviously music, but also in business, creating companies, creating new things in the business world. So in the creative industries, for instance, there were all sorts of gaps in the rights, for instance, for musicians, and I've been successful in a number of occasions over the years of getting substantial changes, that means that the musicians actually, and actors and other artists, actually get a fair deal, and can effectively live by their work. So a few years ago, for instance, I got an extra 20 years of copyright for musicians. So previously, when a musician made a recording, so like my friend Pat Halling, I mentioned, the violinist, he's the violinist actually on the Beatles. All You Need Is Love, bum ba da ba dum. That's Pat playing that as a riff in Abbey Road Studio 2, and those royalties would run out after 50 years. So sort of just when you come to retirement, suddenly your income dries up from your work. So we got an extra 20 years for that, and then recently I've got streaming rights for actors and musicians. That's within the EU. So that means that the licensing bodies acting on behalf of actors and musicians can go directly to Netflix, to Spotify, to Deezer, to Apple Music, etc., and negotiate a fair license fee for that. And then years and years ago, actually, this is in 1992, there was a massive change in education, and there was a national curriculum came in, including a national curriculum for music. And there was a massive debate, and it was basically going to be in a sort of an academic approach. And I thought, no, actually, no, that's not right. That's not the way to do music. It's not the way children should learn and appreciate and enjoy music at school, and particularly at GCSE. So I pushed for composing to be part of the curriculum. And everybody said it was complete nuts. Children, 15-year-old kids can't write music. And anyway, we haven't got any teachers that can teach how to write music. I said, well, actually, that's easily solved. I mean, we're training teachers all the time, and actually, if you're a musician and a teacher, well, then you can. And we succeeded in getting that. So that's why GCSE music students actually write music. And I have to say, over the years, it always gladdens my heart when I'm sort of speaking to people. I did a talk at a school recently, talking to all sixth form, and a lot of the, in fact, all of the GCSE music students came along for the talk as well, because it was, the sort of music creative industry's bias, and chatting to them, and they were all really fired up by the composing element. That was, to them, that was the best bit of GCSE music.
Amazing, isn't it? And then that brings it back to collectively, who are we? In the sense that we are creatives, all of us have something in us to give, and not everyone's as good as someone else if you're doing comparisons, but deep down we can all do this and give back some joy into, yes, our lives, because we're expressing ourselves. And it's interesting, this week has all been about expressing yourself in so many different ways, and every kind of guess or corner I've turned, this is about self-expression, and how liberating that is as well. And I think for children, some of us older people would like to have found that at the beginning. So I implored the next generation that's coming up, and how they're going to use this creativity to change their environment and where they live. This actually brings me to, it just triggered someone in our family is actually recording an album right now, but all the music he's written himself. So you must have had some sort of effect on this schooling, because he is that person. He's actually doing it. So yeah, it is amazing. It really is, and that's an absolute honor and pleasure to be speaking to you. And I must admit, you're the most humble person I know, because I'm not even going to say the accolades, because Dominic, you are amazing. I'm going to leave it at that, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Hello everyone, this is Club 10M Plus's exciting new podcast that's here for you. We are all about stories, new developments and learning about individuals. Our hope is that you will join us every week to hear about our distinguished guests. We hope to inspire you, bring you laughter and make you reflect. Our guests come from all walks of life, and primarily they want to share their stories. Not sure about you, but I love a good story. So Club 10M Plus have devoted their time to creating these podcasts, to sharing great ideas and stories and much more. So tune in every week to make sure that you don't miss out. It could be you next week. Want to know more? We want to hear your stories, so sign up and be our next guest.